on the West Coast in Victoria and Vancouver. With 5 children, I think they needed a break. Or perhaps they thought I needed some healthy stimulation or redirection or something. In any case, it was quite an adventure for me, although I spent most of my time with my extended family. But one of the highlights was coming home. My aunt, a former stewardess, who happened to be a ground hostess for Air Canada at the time at the airport in Vancouver, managed to negotiate my way into first class to her good friend, who also happened to be a steward in charge on my return flight. At my uninformed age, I had no idea what or who a steward was, but during the flight I realized this steward was the reason I was being served lobster, given lovely warm towels, and dished up a dessert I had never had before, beautiful dessert, and extra pillows, and blankets, and a seat that was bigger than any of the other seats further back in the plane. Incidentally, a number of other seats in that area were vacant, so I didn't feel too bad that I was taking somebody's seat. Being a steward, well, we are all stewards, really. As you know, I'm entertained by investigating the origins of words, and steward is an interesting one. In its English form, it dates from the Middle Ages and comes from 2 words, one stig, which is linked with the idea of a pen holding cattle, or a hall or a part of a house in which things or stores were kept. And then there is the second part of the word, weird, or ward, which refers to something akin to a guard. Thus, a stigweard, or steward, originally referred to someone who guarded the house or was the housekeeper. They literally kept the house, or tried to. Over the course of centuries to follow, steward came to be routinely applied in various contexts, including to refer to the one who held the job or office on a ship, the person responsible for feeding everyone. When trains came along, stewards were similarly engaged in providing meals. Stewards also came to be associated with those who looked after the estates of others on behalf of someone who employed them to do so. Thus, the steward had significant power and influence. The Scottish name Stewart is derived from this meaning and thereby also related to royalty. Now, don't fall asleep yet. The relationship with the steward, as I discovered with my very kind aunt, is a significant thing. It is sort of like knowing the one who owns the grocery store or the warehouse filled with neat stuff, or the one who knows the combination of the safe at the bank. Do they still keep stuff in the safe at the bank? I don't know. There are rules and regulations associated with it all, of course, but my goodness, the steward can have a great deal to attend to, and within their own context, certain wonderful graces to enjoy, including by sharing what is at their disposal. So how are we stewards, you might ask? Well, some of us have a lot, and some of us have a little, and probably the vast majority of us are somewhere in between. But wherever we are on the scale of having, there is no doubt that every human being possesses something so long as they are alive, and therefore also are deserving of respect. And often we are not mindful enough of what we have in this sense. This past week, as you may have seen in the news, 2 people received the Nobel Peace Prize. The young Pakistani girl, Malala Yousafzai, I hope I pronounced her last name right. She was nearly killed by the Taliban 2 years ago and arose after surgery to give an inspiring speech last year at the United Nations on how the world could change for the better, as she put it, with one child, one teacher, one book, one pen. The youngest person ever to receive the prize. This on the same week as the International Day of the Girl Child, which was, I believe, yesterday. And the other prize went to Kailash Satyarthi, who has been courageously fighting for more than 30 years for children's right not to be forced into labor in India and too many other places in the world to name. They used not bank accounts or huge stores of material resources. They used their very lives, their spirit, themselves, to make this a better world. They stewarded their energy within to make this a better world for us all. The courage they've shown and the clarity of thinking and acting for the right and the just is deserving of praise of everyone. For this and so much more, we can all be so grateful. Gratitude. That is what this day is all about, isn't it? Thanksgiving. I think it is something of a natural human tendency to forget about that which we have been given and who gave it, and focus not so much on that for which we should be thankful. But that for which we might be disappointed gets into our primary focus, or the things that we're frustrated with, or the things we're angry about or hurt about. It would seem ours is a world more often driven by complaint than praise or the spirit of thankfulness. We are so ready to focus on the negative and the dark side that we neglect the positive and the light, even when it is shining right in on our face. Even Jesus asks what would seem to be a slightly rhetorical question in his story about the cleansing of the 10 lepers. Leprosy, the scourge of the age, really. Arguably something of an Ebola of the time. Yet 10 being cleansed of it. What a miracle indeed. And the foreigner, the Samaritan, is the only one that turns back to the source of the cleansing with thanksgiving to God. The 9 others, seemingly mindlessly, keep going, evidently with no apparent thankfulness of spirit. And the closing line is, "Yet the faith that the Samaritan had has made him well," says Jesus. While it is not explicitly stated, we might well wonder if the disposition of the 9 others has really made them well, or in some sense they were totally cured. Their outward obvious problem seems to have disappeared, but their inward spiritual problem evidently remains. Being well really is a matter of not nurturing a bitter, demanding, selfish disposition, but having a thankful, generous one, a grateful one that is not to remain hidden, but is to be freely expressed and shared. What is thankfulness if it isn't expressed? It is not. Was British poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning right about human beings when, in reference to gratitude, she said, "This race is never grateful from the first. One fills their cup at supper with pure wine, which back they give at cross time on a sponge in bitter vinegar." Are we just hopelessly and incurably thankless? Or do most of us, as the cynical French philosopher once suggested, dispense gratitude as evidence of a merely secret hope of further favors? Let's hope not. A preacher tells the manufactured, though humorous, story of a large dog who walks into a butcher shop carrying a purse in its mouth. He puts the purse down and sits in front of the meat case. "What is it, boy?" the butcher jokingly asks. Want to buy some meat? Woof, barks the dog. Says the butcher. What kind? Liver? Bacon? Steak? Woof, interrupts the dog. And how much steak? Half a pound? 1 pound? Woof. The amazed butcher wraps up the meat and finds the money in the dog's purse. As the dog leaves, he decides to follow. The dog goes into an apartment building and takes the elevator to the 6th floor and begins scratching at the door. With that, the door swings open and an angry man starts shouting at the dog. "Stop!" yells the butcher. "He's the most intelligent animal I've ever seen." "Intelligent," says the man. "This is the 4th time this week he's forgotten his key." He wasn't. We all have more than we realize. So much to be grateful for. Indeed, but for the grace of God, most of us here were not born in the deserts of Somalia or Ethiopia or in Canada's far north where they struggle to live. We readily recognize the impoverishment of others, but seldom the wealth that has been channeled in our direction and the amazing life all around us. You could argue that in a certain sense, nothing we have is purely of our own doing. What we eat, where we lay our head at night, our transportation, clothing, our measure of health, the presence of loved ones, or even their memory. Oh, sure, most of us have worked hard for our living, as some are quick to claim. I remember as a kid always hearing that phrase, "I've worked hard to get where I am." We've all heard that. But when push comes to shove, as they say, these gifts are best thought of not as things we demand and have a right to or have created for ourselves, but are blessings that are shared with us for a time. Things for which we ought to be grateful. After all, we can't take it with us, as you know, but many of us try. There's a documentary narrated by Russell Crowe about the plight of the wine-growing business in Bordeaux, France, where international investors are so much speculating on the increasing value of the wine that they are causing its enormous rise in price, to a level where very few can afford to drink it, and the ones that can prefer to use it like a financial investment. Some of them never see the wine, and it's just stored somewhere. There's a certain absurdity in what we have come to value in life in our modern world, and with it a certain loss of appreciation for what things really are, along with a thankfulness for them. But gratitude is good for you. And part of being suitably grateful is understanding the nature of not just what has been given to you, but who gave it, and returning to respond in praise. It is more than just about things we hold in our hands or place on our dinner tables, much as I like turkey and all the trimmings, or a glass of wine. Have you ever received a gift that is totally removed from anything you need or want, but somehow you feel deep gratitude, not because of the thing you hold or that is before you, but because of the spirit and life and even love of the person from whom it has come? The airline steward and my aunt gave me a gift because they cared about my experience home. They wanted to give me a real charge, something that I could look back on in years to come and preach on today. Perhaps our problem in the modern world is that we are so forward-thinking, so busy trying to be smart enough to escape the supposed misery of a reality that is not yet, that we expend all our energy and concentration on engineering a future that totally forgets the graces of the past past and even the present. We are like the 9 cured lepers that keep on walking. That's a big problem in that it not only affects what happens now and in the future, but it determines who we are, how kind we are, how generous we are, and how thankful we are to become. I'm going to resist this morning reminding you of how psychologists and doctors affirm how healthy those people are who regularly practice being generous with others and reflect upon how grateful they are for all that they have in life. I'm going to resist that. I'm going to resist reminding us of that divine economy which is beyond all the doom and gloom so often uttered from the voices on Wall and Bay Streets. It is interesting, it used to be the practice of cultures past to periodically cancel all debts and forgive interest. Wow, what a gift, eh? Especially if you owe money. There is something to be thankful for. The point here is that banks are here to serve the people, not the other way around. Wouldn't that raise the blood pressure of the CEO of your average chartered bank? But does our society need to be reminded that you can't take it with you? Nonetheless, there is a spirit that endures through all. When we invest in the spirit of thankfulness, it pays dividends for years to come. But don't do it for yourself. Do it for someone else. That's the essence of good stewardship. We can all have the fruits of the harvest laid out on the table, but if we shelve generosity to others and forget the labor and plain blessing in life that has delivered what we have before us and everything else we enjoy in life, the spirit of thanksgiving is quite foreign to us. What is gratitude if it is not to stop thinking about ourselves and our own needs and reflecting on the unfathomable generosity of that great and divine steward of us all, from whom all things come? Such gratitude isn't to be postponed or celebrated but once a year, but joyously contemplated every day, every moment. Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well. Welcome to first class. Happy Thanksgiving.